History is filled with tales of shadowy groups operating from the fringes, but few capture the imagination quite like the Hashashin. We often picture them as mysterious figures, cloaked and silent, emerging from the darkness to strike down powerful rulers before vanishing without a trace. This image, while dramatic, has its roots in a very real and fascinating historical context. The Hashashin, more accurately known as the Nizari Ismaili state, were a religious and political force that carved out a unique existence in the turbulent world of the medieval Middle East. They were not merely hired killers, they were members of a Shia Muslim sect with a distinct ideology, fighting for their survival and influence against overwhelming odds. Their story is a powerful blend of faith, politics, and pioneering covert warfare. The origins of this remarkable group can be traced back to the late 11th century, a time of deep religious and political division within the Islamic world. The Ismaili branch of Shia Islam had itself fractured, leading to the rise of the Nizari Ismailis. Their spiritual leader was a man named Hassan-i Sabbah, a brilliant strategist, scholar, and missionary. He was a charismatic figure who believed passionately in his cause and recognized that his small community could not hope to defeat their larger, more powerful enemies through conventional warfare. The ruling Seljuk Empire, who were Sunni Muslims, viewed the Nizari Ismailis as heretics and relentlessly persecuted them, seeking to wipe them out completely. This existential threat forced Hassan to devise a new asymmetrical approach to defense and political action. Hassan-i Sabbah's journey led him across Persia, gathering followers and searching for a base of operations secure from the Seljuk armies. He found the perfect location in 1090, the formidable mountain fortress of Alamut, located in the rugged Alborz mountains of northern Iran. The name Alamut is said to mean eagle's nest, a fitting title for the near-impregnable stronghold that would become the heart of the Nizari state. From this mountain sanctuary, Hassan established a network of similar fortresses throughout Persia and later in Syria. This chain of mountain strongholds formed a decentralized, yet highly coordinated state that was incredibly difficult for any conventional army to conquer. It was a kingdom built on cliffs and loyalty, designed for survival. The followers Hassan gathered were bound by an intense devotion to their leader, whom they saw as their spiritual guide and protector. This was not a mercenary guild. It was a deeply religious community united by shared beliefs and a common purpose. The Nizari Ismailis believed in a divine truth that could only be understood through the teachings of their imam, their spiritual leader. Hassan-i Sabbah, as the representative of the hidden imam, commanded absolute loyalty. This unwavering faith was the bedrock of his organization. It transformed ordinary men into dedicated agents, or fida'is, self-sacrificers, who were willing to undertake incredibly dangerous missions, not for gold or glory, but for the preservation of their community and their faith in the face of annihilation. Life within Alamut and the other Nizari strongholds was a world away from the tales of dark intrigue often spun by their enemies. These were not just military garrisons, they were thriving, self-sufficient communities. They contained extensive libraries filled with priceless manuscripts on theology, philosophy, astronomy, and science. Hassan-i Sabbah and his successors were not just military commanders, they were patrons of learning and scholarship. The inhabitants cultivated terraced gardens on the mountainsides, engineered sophisticated water channels and cisterns, and created a society that could withstand long sieges. This focus on intellectual pursuits and community development demonstrates that their primary goal was to live out their faith in peace, a goal that required a formidable defense. The organization of the Nizari state was strictly hierarchical, built upon layers of secrecy and a clear chain of command. At the very top was the leader at Alamut, often referred to as the Old Man of the Mountain, a title that added to the mystique of the order. Below him were chief missionaries and commanders who oversaw different regions and fortresses. Then came the rank-and-file believers and of course the most famous group, the Fida'is. These were the dedicated agents trained for specific missions. This structure ensured that information was carefully controlled, with lower-ranking members knowing only what was necessary for their roles. This compartmentalization protected the leadership and made the organization incredibly resilient against infiltration and betrayal. The training of a Fida'i was rigorous and comprehensive, going far beyond simple combat skills. They were masters of disguise, linguistics, and infiltration. A Fida'i might spend months or even years integrating himself into an enemy court or military camp, learning its routines and gaining the trust of his target. He had to be patient, disciplined, and incredibly observant. This deep cover approach was their greatest weapon. They were not mindless assassins, but intelligent operatives, who gathered crucial intelligence before they ever drew a dagger. Their missions were meticulously planned, relying on surprise and psychological shock, rather than brute force. The goal was to eliminate a key figure with surgical precision, sowing chaos and fear among their enemies. Loyalty within the Nizari community was absolute, forged from a combination of religious conviction and shared persecution. They saw their leader as the embodiment of their spiritual path, and his orders were considered sacred duties. This bond was far stronger than any oath sworn to a king or general. The Fidaes willingly sacrificed their lives because they believed they were serving a higher purpose, protecting their families, their faith, and their right to exist. This unwavering devotion was incomprehensible to their adversaries, who could only explain it by resorting to fantastical stories of brainwashing, paradise gardens, and mind-altering drugs. The truth, however, was simpler and far more powerful. It was the strength of profound belief. The Nizari Ismailis perfected the art of psychological warfare, understanding that fear could be a more potent weapon than an army. Their primary tactic, the targeted political assassination, was designed for maximum impact. They did not kill randomly. Their targets were carefully selected political and military leaders, viziers, generals, caliphs, and crusader lords, whose removal would disrupt enemy command structures and political stability. By striking at the very top, a single agent could achieve what an entire army could not. This strategy allowed a small, isolated community to exert influence far beyond its size, holding powerful empires like the Seljuk Sultanate, and even the Crusader states in check. It was the ultimate form of asymmetrical warfare. The method of assassination was just as important as the act itself. The Fidaes almost always carried out their missions in public places, in crowded mosques, busy marketplaces, or within the target's own court. This was a deliberate choice. A private killing could be covered up or dismissed as an accident, but a public assassination was an undeniable statement of the Nizari's reach and power. It sent a clear message to all who witnessed it: no one, no matter how powerful or well-guarded, was safe. The assassin rarely tried to escape. Their mission was often a suicide mission. This public sacrifice amplified the terror and cemented the legend of the fearless Hashashin in the minds of their enemies. This strategy gave rise to the name that would echo through history: assassin. European crusaders who encountered the Nizari state in Syria brought back tales of the fearsome sect. The term assassin is widely believed to be a corruption of the Arabic word Hashashin. Their enemies, particularly in Syria, used this term as a pejorative slur, claiming that the Fidaes were intoxicated with hashish before being sent on their missions. This propaganda was a convenient way to dehumanize the Nizaris and dismiss their followers' incredible devotion as the product of drug-induced stupor rather than genuine religious faith. There is, however, no reliable historical evidence from Nizari sources to suggest that they used hashish in this way. The myths surrounding the Hashashin were further embellished by travelers like Marco Polo, who never actually visited Alamut but passed on sensational secondhand stories. He wrote of a secret garden of paradise where young recruits were drugged and tricked into believing they had experienced the afterlife, thus ensuring their loyalty. This tale, while incredibly evocative, is almost certainly a fabrication. It was a powerful piece of enemy propaganda that served to explain the Nizari's inexplicable bravery and devotion. The reality is that their fortress libraries and scholarly pursuits paint a very different picture from the lurid tales of drug-fueled fanatics. The legend, however, proved more compelling than the more complex truth. For over 150 years, the Nizari state of Alamut and its network of fortresses stood as a testament to Hassan-i Sabbah's vision. They weathered countless attacks and outlasted many of their powerful rivals. However, they had never faced an enemy like the Mongols. In the mid-13th century, the Mongol Empire under the command of Hulagu Khan swept across Persia with an unstoppable army. Their mission was to crush all resistance, and the Nizari strongholds were directly in their path. The Mongols brought with them advanced siege technology, including powerful siege engines from China, which were capable of breaking down even the most formidable mountain fortifications. The era of the impregnable fortress was coming to a brutal end. The downfall of the Nizari state was swift and devastating. In 1256, after a determined siege, the fortress of Alamut finally surrendered to Hulagu Khan. The Nizari leader at the time, Rukn al-Din Kursha, was promised his life but was later executed. The Mongols then systematically moved from one fortress to another, capturing and dismantling them one by one. They were incredibly thorough in their destruction. The magnificent library at Alamut, said to contain hundreds of thousands of volumes of Ismaili knowledge and history, was almost entirely burned. This act was a catastrophic loss, wiping out the Nizari's own historical records and ensuring that much of what we know about them today comes from the pens of their enemies. Despite the physical destruction of their state, the legend of the Hashashin not only survived, but grew. The stories carried back to Europe by crusaders and merchants took on a life of their own, cementing the word assassin into Western languages as a generic term for a political murderer. The tales of their stealth, discipline, and unwavering loyalty became the blueprint for countless secret societies in fiction and popular culture. From Renaissance literature to modern video games and films, the image of the cloaked killer operating from the shadows continues to fascinate us. The Hashashin became a powerful archetype, a symbol of the mysterious agent who can change the course of history with a single decisive act. The legacy of the Hashashin, therefore, is twofold. On one hand, there is the historical reality of the Nizari Ismaili community, a resilient and intellectually vibrant group that developed a unique method of survival in a hostile world. Their story is a compelling chapter in the history of religious minorities and asymmetrical warfare. On the other hand, there is the powerful myth they inspired, a myth of intrigue, secrecy, and deadly efficiency that has endured for centuries. While we must be careful to separate the fascinating history from the often inaccurate legend, there is no denying the profound and lasting impact the Hashashin have had on our collective imagination. Their shadow still looms large over history,